today we will start with the first keynote plenary session, with Donna Hudson. It's our pleasure to have her with us here. We are proud to have your presence here, and just say thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce Donna. I've been privileged to know her for a few years, first when she was president of the IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society, where she served with them for two years as president and then additional time in other positions, and later as TAB chair and vice president of technical activities. She's currently heading the new IEEE Life Sciences community, of which Consumer Electronics Society is a member. She received her PhD at UCLA in engineering, and she's currently a professor at the University of California in San Francisco. So if you could welcome her for her keynote address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane. If you see me hobbling around, I have broken my ankle, so I may be leaning on the podium, but hopefully it will be all right. So I'm pleased to be here. I'm very happy that I was invited to give this talk, and I look forward to getting some questions from you at the end. So the title of my talk today is The Impact of Technology on Current Medical Practice, and what I've done is tried to give some history and also focus on some areas that I think you in consumer electronics would be interested in. So first of all, I'll start out with a short history and then talk about some areas related to healthcare specifically and some of the historic contributions to healthcare technologies. This is moving on its own. Can somebody help with this? It's on auto. We need to get it off auto.
Okay, so escape.
Otherwise, we'll have a really short talk here.
Oh, it's in the Germans and the computers in German. So.
Okay, it's in German, and we're. You think that's it? Since we can't read the German.
That's the slideshow from the beginning, and no.
And we don't want an auto advance on it.
It should do only on like this button, and then you can back with the arrow button.
Just on this arrow button?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so after that interlude, we will start again. So I also want to spend a little time talking about the contributions of your group, Consumer Electronics Society, to this area, and they actually have been quite substantial. And some of the cooperative efforts, and then perhaps the future. So if you go back some distance into the 19th century, this was really when we started to see the things that were developing that have led to some of the tools we have now in medicine. So if you go back to 1850, 75, a couple of things happened. First of all, Louis Pasteur came up with the idea of pasteurization, which actually was a great boon to medicine because up to that time people were dying from disease because of the contaminated food chain. Also in that same time frame, in 76 to 1900, we had the first X-ray, of course by Roentgen, and as a result, we had diagnostic advantages that didn't exist up to that point. Of course, we all take these things as commonplace these days. We don't know what we would do without them. But up until that time, diagnosis was very difficult. People would break bones. Nobody knew what was going on, and they had no way of scanning for example, the lungs or anything else for internal problems. So these two things were really great advances at that time. If we go up to the 20th century, a lot of things started happening quickly. First of all, we had typhoid and tuberculosis vaccines, and one of the instigators of those was almost right. We had insulin developed by Frederick Banting and Charles Best. We had the electrocardiogram from Eindhoven. We had radium from, of course, Marie and Pierre Curie. Unfortunately, of course, she wound up dying because of her discovery from radioactivity. She died of blood disease from the radioactivity. And we also had penicillin from Alexander Fleming. So as you can see, compared to what happened in the previous century, in these 50 years, a lot of things happened that we take for granted today in medicine. So let's look at the latter 20th century to today. So we're a little over a half a century now, from 1951 to 2014. Many things happened. Pacemakers, the structure of DNA, the artificial heart, computer-aided tomography, polio vaccines, tetracycline, magnetic resonance imaging. I'd like to know how many people in the audience have taken advantage of any of those things I just read off. Quite a few. Of course, you're all pretty young, so when you get older, unfortunately, you'll probably take further advantage of these things. And just continuing, we now have laser surgery. Anybody have laser surgery? Well, you guys are all too healthy, so. Well, you know, this is a big band for people who have some minor thing that needs fixing. You don't have to get the big incisions, you know, everything's done very easily. We have the Jarvik heart, the artificial heart, genetic engineering, the Human Genome Project, which we'll talk a little bit about later. The human genome is actually changing the way medicine is practiced, because now instead of just looking at population statistics to determine how to treat someone, you can actually look at their specific DNA and find out what is the best way to treat the individual. This is still in development. Right now it's still in a primitive stage, but in many instances they can find a direct information that will help them in treating the patient. As more is discovered about the human genome, this will become more prevalent. We have stem cell research, we have targeted cancer therapies, and many, many other things. So you see what's been happening in the last century and a half is we have really increased the pace of these discoveries. So if you look at the medical advances since just 1970, the medical devices that did not exist before is the CT scan. Some of you guys are pretty young, so you probably don't remember when we didn't have CT scans. I had some personal experiences with my mother who had a brain tumor, and this was before the CT scan, and they had really no way of diagnosing and locating the tumor so that they could treat it successfully. So she had some really far-reaching surgery, which wouldn't happen today because they have this device. The PET scanner is also recent. Of course, magnetic resonance imaging now is a very big thing, and also implantable defibrillators. So these devices are all new since 1970. Even the medical records, again, you guys are too young. We should get some older people in here. In the past, you'd go in to see your doctor, and they'd drag out, depending on how old you were, this stack of paper of what you'd had previously. And I noticed that they never went through the whole thing. They look at the last page or two to see what happened to you lately. This is not really good information. So if you have your electronic medical record, they can really easily produce your whole lifetime record to see how to treat you, what you may have, and so forth. And of course, telemedicine. Telemedicine is a new development which is good for treating people at long distances. And in fact, a lot of radiology these days, if you go back to the medical devices, the CTs and the PETs and the MRIs, these are often read in pieces apart from where they're scanned. Years ago, UCSF, where I work, had one of the first far-reaching CT scans and MRI scans. And what they would do in off hours is these scans actually were read in Israel and the results were sent back over the internet. So you don't have to be in the same place anymore. Things can go back and forth. You can collect the data anywhere and you can receive it somewhere else. Treatments that have recently developed include angioplasty and plasticity and the new drugs for treatments, automated surgery. Have any of you ever seen videos of the automated surgery that use robots? It's really pretty impressive and a little scary at the same time. So you actually have the robot in doing the surgery, and the surgeon's watching it, but the robot is doing the surgery. It's very impressive. The human genome I mention again because it's very important. And also the idea of personalized medicine. Personalized medicine is still in its development, but basically what that does for you is it looks at your genome, it looks at your family history, and the treatment and the diagnosis is done according to you individually instead of the population statistics, which is the way it had been done in the past. Okay, what's the IEEE got to do with medicine? I think 30 years ago, the IEEE didn't really have too much to do with medicine, but things have changed. So, as Joan told you, I'm a former president of EMBS, so I have to say something about EMBS. Originally, Engineering Medicine Biology Society was the only IEEE society which was interested in healthcare technologies. However, things have changed a lot over the years. So right now, a number of societies, including consumer electronics is one of the leading ones, have expanding interests in health-related topics. This, for a while, made EMBS a little nervous because, you know, people are a bit territorial. But I think they've come to terms with this and recognize that this is a very good thing for all of IEEE and for society in general. So due to this change in direction, in 2014, the life sciences technical community was formed to help coordinate issues and to get common interests together so we could work together. And I guess I was going to say fortunate, but I don't know whether fortunate is the right word. I'm a current chair of the life sciences technical community. We've been meeting mainly by telephone since the beginning of this year. We have some plans, and consumer electronics is one of the member societies. So these are the societies: circuits and systems, communications, computer, consumer electronics. You notice I gave you a bold representation up there. Control systems, and of course EMBS. So in the beginning it was a little rocky and people were territorial, as you may have seen in other places in the IEEE, and not working together too well. But I think this has changed, and we are now starting to have some good cooperation, and hopefully we can move forward with this endeavor. And for your group here, we have Stefan Mozar, who you guys may have heard of from somewhere else. I don't know. And he participated in the Memorandum of Understanding that set up this group, which we call LSTC. And believe me, that wasn't easy. It went on for quite a while, and there was a lot of debates going on. And Nahum Gershon and Stefan, who are both here, are the CES representatives to the life sciences technical community. So I want to personally thank both of them for doing this. They've been great participants, and we look forward to doing great things. I have this picture that Nahum actually took. Where is he? There he is. He's not in the picture because he was busy taking pictures, so I'm sorry I don't have a picture of him. But this was our booth at the IEEE Sections Conference, which happened just a few weeks ago. And thanks to him, we have a picture of John Waltz and myself. Some of you may know him, sitting in our booth. And then we have some visitors that we're chatting with. And just a little thing I tacked on here because we found it amusing. If you look at the bottom here, the life sciences technical community, anybody see anything strange about that? It has too many E's in there. And we were the only booth that they did this to. For some reason, they gave us an extra E, so we said that stood for excellence, so we're going with that. Also at this meeting at the Sections Congress, the IEEE Medal for Healthcare Technologies was awarded to Leroy Hood. Do any of you know who Leroy Hood is?
I didn't know before I was there.
Oh, now you know. So he actually has developed a large company in Seattle that is related to systems health, and he's been doing this for a number of years. He's quite successful. So we have the president of IEEE there on your left side, Roberto DeMarco. Some of you may know him, and we have the incoming president, Howard Mickle. And then that's Leroy standing there next to me. So this is a medal that was established by EMBS some years ago because we felt there was nothing in IEEE that gave any kind of a medal related to this field. So when I was president of EMBS, I proposed this medal, and It caused some controversy because normally societies don't do this. So I think it took us about 2 years before they actually approved it. But now we've been giving it out for several years, and I think it's a very good thing for not only EMBS, but for IEEE as a whole, that we're recognizing these areas. Okay, some historic contributions. If we look at this century, things have really speeded up a lot. So obviously, I'm not going to give you everything, but I want to tell you a few things about new things that are going on. Earl Bakken, who actually, some of you may know, developed the pacemaker quite a few years ago. The pacemaker really saved a lot of people's lives who had arrhythmias, and this allowed them to go home and live normal lives. I had the honor of meeting him. He came to one of our EMBS meetings, and you'll notice he's there with a lei around his neck. He's a very nice man who now lives in Hawaii and is enjoying his life. And this is a picture of him at his 90th birthday. So I think that this discovery of the pacemaker did some good for Earl, too. So he's very happily enjoying his life. Another person I've listed here is Stanley Barron, who was responsible for the application of TV technology in medical imaging, which actually started the medical imaging approach that we now have in many areas. I threw that diagram up there, which nobody can read, but obviously this guy's an electrical engineer, and that's how he was looking at it. Another person who was very important in the 20th century was Hans Berger, who developed the electroencephalogram, and Richard Smalley, who looked at building blocks of nanotechnology, and you notice that little insignia over on the right-hand side is for this. He actually did receive the Nobel Prize in Medicine. So these are just a few things I'm pointing out. The reason I wanted to spend a little time on this is what has happened in the last, say, 60 years is really phenomenal in how it has changed healthcare. And it's due to technology. It's due to the technologies that everyone here is focused on. Whether you're doing things directly related to medicine, many things developed in IEEE societies have had an impact on medicine. Okay, let's look a little bit at what's going on in the 21st century in healthcare technologies. And I call this eyes, ears, and the immune system, which doesn't seem very congruent, but you'll see why I have these up shortly. Okay, the first thing I call bionic parts. There's a California company that's called Second Sight, and they have recently gotten FDA approval to market a bionic eye. This is for people, obviously, who cannot see. So what it is, it's a tiny camera, and it's in the patient's glasses. It captures the images, it converts the images into electrical pulses, and they're transmitted wirelessly to an antenna in the retina, and these people can actually see using the device. Now, this is pretty phenomenal to actually develop something that allows sightless people to see. So I think this is one of the great advances we can look at. This is another interesting thing. This is from Cornell. The scientists have printed an outer ear using a 3D printer. So that doesn't quite look like an ear to me, but I assume it's in progress, so at some point it will look like an ear. So they're actually able to use these printers to do things like this, to create body parts. And I think this is something that's just being developed. You'll see a lot more in the coming days. And what about the immune system? Unfortunately, we're all susceptible to things that could go wrong with our immune system. And the war on cancer, for example, has been going on for a very long time. There is some evidence that the experts suggest that they may have turned a corner on fighting cancer immunotherapy. And this is in a Science magazine article called Breakthrough of the Year. So basically, they're finding new ways to actually get into the body and fix things that are going wrong. So what exactly is cancer immunotherapy? It uses drugs that spur the body's immune system to battle the tumor. It's not the same approach that's taken now where you essentially get some kind of a drug that tries to kill the tumor. The cancer therapy that uses this technique, they give the patient very harmful drugs which go out and kill the cancer, but unfortunately they kill a lot of the good cells as well. So this approach doesn't do that. These are essentially injecting things that make the immune system attack the cancer. So it's a different approach to cancer. Okay, I just threw this in there, the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show, to show you how everything is really rapidly changing. The digital health devices took up 40% more exhibit space than they did the previous year. So you can see that this is a good example of how rapidly everything is changing. A 40% increase in anything is pretty phenomenal, but to do this within 1 year, and you get that many more devices that have come on the market, you know that things are really changing for the good. So you guys out there who are, I don't know, we have anybody who's 25 or so? You have a good future coming, because there'll be a lot more ways that disease can be treated in the future. And it's really expanding very, very rapidly. Okay, so what role does technology currently play in healthcare? Some related consumer electronics topics that I tried to look up in some of your publications and your conferences is the application of haptic devices in rehabilitation medicine, computer-aided design, critical reviews of current methods in biomedical engineering. These are just a few. So from what I could see, I spent a little time working on this, that this group, the group you have, is actually doing a lot of things related to medicine, technology in medicine. And I did come up with one publication, Reviews in Biomedical Engineering, which is co-sponsored with EMBS. These are the two co-sponsors of this publication. It's Consumer Electronics and EMBS. And this publication contains critical reviews of methods applied to current clinical problems in which biotechnology is playing a crucial role. So I think this is a very good collaboration, and very happy to see this. I want to spend a little time talking about this because it goes back a little bit to the life sciences technical community, which has the 6 societies, of which, of course, consumer electronics is one. The future, I think, is working together within IEEE. I don't know how much you have become involved in the actual operation of IEEE, but there were years ago, and actually up to really recently, silos within the IEEE where people worked within their own society. The IEEE has about 40 societies, and they each have a field of interest, and being normal people, everybody tries to protect their field of interest. So they would concentrate on just working with within their own group. The idea between the LSTC, which currently has the 6 societies, is that we can do more if we work together, because each society has their own expertise that they can contribute to these topics. If you look at EMBS, everything they do is related to medicine. But if you look at the other societies, and consumer electronics is one of the top ones there are specific things that these societies do that are not the same as EMBS. They're different approaches, they're different methods, they're different areas that are being looked at. Working together in this LSTC, we can actually make a lot more progress than we can alone. So we're sort of running around trying to convince everybody to work together, and so far we've gotten a lot of response. So I think that this is going to be a very good initiative. I also dug up a few things from some of the consumer electronics activities you guys probably know about, but I thought you should get some public credit for, is the conference of 2014, Health Innovations and Point of Care Technologies in Seattle. Did any of you guys go to that one? That's not good. You live there. And you didn't go to it. You know, I found this in the IEEE. They've got so many conferences that you start looking there. You know, there are just hundreds of conferences, and it's very easy to miss one that you really wish later that you had gone to. And I don't know how to solve that problem, because they do email things around, but you know, once you get 200 email from the IEEE, you stop looking at them.
So, well, we can talk about
You have time. This is in October. You can still go to this. I'm sorry I didn't put down the date. But if you go online, you'll find it. So you still have time to go. This is co-sponsored actually with EMBS. It's a co-sponsored conference with EMBS. And I plan to go, so I hope to see you there. Maybe some of the rest of you too. So it's just those two societies co-sponsoring it. I also just pulled out one publication as an example of something that was done in the IEEE Transactions on Consumer Electronics, which is an enhanced fall detection system for elderly person monitoring using consumer home networks. And I think this is a really hot area right now. Consumer electronics is doing a lot, some other of the societies are too, is to find some protective measure for home health care. Especially as the population ages, people are living longer. There are a lot of problems with elderly people living alone in their homes. And there is a lot of room for doing work in this area. So I'm glad to see that you have some people working on that. Okay, so what are the consumer electronics contributions? I have one example here from the ICCE in September 2008 that I just pulled out, which is related to what we were just talking about, consumer electronics opportunities in remote and home health care. And I don't know, is anybody here working in that area now? Yeah, they're not here. But I think this is going to be an area that's going to really expand because there will be a great need for this. And the other thing is, if you look at it from the point of view of economics, keeping people healthy in their homes is a lot better than having them wind up in the hospital. So if you can use monitoring devices, one of the things that is very useful now that everybody has computers at home is you can do remote modeling and see what's happening with the patient, see if they're doing all right, check up on them daily and so forth. And the patient can also contact somebody directly. So I think this kind of support will be very helpful in keeping people who don't necessarily have to run to the doctor for something. They can stay home, they can get advice directly through the internet. And of course, they still, at some point, of course, need to see their doctors. But I think that, especially people living in remote areas, I have a colleague who, I don't know whether I should say that, he probably won't mind. He lives in Wyoming, and Wyoming is very spread out and doesn't have much in the way of health care in the remote areas. He has the joke that when you're driving down the road in Wyoming and you see a car coming, they don't have to signal because you already know who they are and where they're going to turn. So the state is pretty empty. And he works in this area. So in areas like this is very important that you have some kind of remote I don't know why I can't say that word today, jet lag. Remote moderating from home to make sure that these people can get help, especially if they live somewhere 200 miles away and they have no other option. Okay, so I thought this was an interesting thing that I ran across. I did a little research before coming here to try to find something you guys might be interested in. So, recent new technologies, this is from Forbes, these are projections. So if you look at the Forbes list and the connections with your society, CES, 3D printing, you have the IEEE Transactions on Haptics co-sponsored with Robotics and Computer that actually has a lot of articles on 3D printing. Artificial intelligence, you have the Transactions on Computational Intelligence and AI in games, but obviously game theory can be used in a lot of areas that are really important areas. We have the next one is brain-computer interface, and you have the Transactions on Haptics, which is co-sponsored with Computer Society, which is very interested in brain-computer interface. Robotics, you have the Transactions on Autonomous Medical Development. Point-of-care diagnostics, you have a co-sponsored conference with EMBS, which I mentioned, which is coming up shortly. So I was very impressed with this. I think that your society is very well positioned to deal with what Forbes, I mean, you could argue with Forbes, but probably in this case you won't argue because these things that they mentioned are things that are being addressed by your society. So I think it's a very impressive list, and I think you should be commended for all the things you're doing in that area. Okay, so what about the future? What role can technology play in healthcare in the future? Cooperative efforts across IEEE are very important in this area because a lot of societies have things to contribute So CES is a co-sponsor of RFID. Does anybody here work with the RFID group? And I think this has been going on, how long has that been going on? For several years. A few years. I have a friend who works in that area who's not in consumer electronics but is connected with it. So and if you look up the LSTC, which are those 6 societies, we are, well, I have 2 people who are on the committee. We have Stefan and we have, we have Nahum over there hiding, yes. So I don't know, how do you think that's going? I think that we're making progress, because I think in the beginning, to tell you the truth, I can say this to this group, EMBS was a little reluctant because this is what they do. You know, this is all they do. So they thought, suddenly we've got these guys, you know, what does consumer electronics know about medical activities, medical technologies? I think they've changed their mind. As far as I can see, they've changed their mind. We have phone calls about every 2 weeks, and we're not yelling at each other anymore. We're all relatively happy. So I think LSTC is going to be a good thing, and this is open to other societies. We hope to expand it beyond those 6 societies so others can join us. New, currently unknown technology. I think if you had gone back 20 years and been asked to project what kind of new medical technologies you would have in the next 20 years, we would have missed almost everything. I think we have things today that nobody even dreamed of 20 years ago. We have diagnostics that didn't exist or were even thought of. We have treatments that didn't exist. We have the Human Genome Project, which has not yet come to fruition, but it will. So we will have individualized health care. It won't be, right now, the way they treat diagnosis, they look at your family history. So they want to say, well, what did your grandmother have? What did your grandfather have? What did your parents have? And they use that as evidence for what you may be susceptible to. This is good up to a point. However, if you have the genome, you have physical evidence of what you're susceptible to, and you can then be treated. And you can be treated in advance before you get a disease that you may be prone to get. So the human genome is yet to fulfill its potential, but this will happen shortly. Collaboration between engineers and physicians. I think this is very important. I work for a medical school. University of California, San Francisco is a medical school. However, I'm an engineer. There is a very large group of engineers working at UC San Francisco. And we work together with the physicians. In the beginning, we worked a lot with radiologists because radiologists underneath are really engineers. They just happened to go into medicine and realized that they didn't want to see those patients. They wanted to go off and look at their images. So there is a lot of interaction now in our particular community, between technology and medicine. In fact, there's something called Mission Bay. I don't know if any of you have ever been to San Francisco. UCSF has a huge hospital, and then across town they have something called Mission Bay, which is where the technology people live. So there's an enormous amount of interaction going on to develop new things among the physicians and the engineers and the other biologists and so forth. So technology is really being integrated into medicine. I give you that example because I know about this one. But this is happening in many, many places where this integration is happening. And I think that pushing the boundaries is what we have to do. We don't have to be afraid to go out and try new things and to develop new collaborations. And I'm very happy, actually, that you invited me here because I really was pleased when consumer electronics joined the life sciences community because I think you have an important role to play in that group. And I think, I wasn't around when they were having these arguments, but I think that Stefan was there that went on for some time when we were forming this. And it was rocky in the beginning, getting societies together, but I think now we are cooperating well. And I hope that we'll be able to play a larger role in the future in this area. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. They told me 35 minutes I should talk, so I think I did that. So I would like to hear your questions and have some discussion.
Are there any questions?
I'll
Sure,
let
one
you
at a
ask
time.
two, yes.
One question is, I didn't see it mentioned explicitly the contribution of information technology to healthcare. Okay, for example, medical records, collecting the data about where we are, wearable computing, yeah. So that's my first question. There is a reason for that, or it's just that you had too many topics to talk about, which I have to
Well,
pick and choose?
you know, we have to pick and choose. I did mention, though, the medical record very briefly. And I think the electronic medical record has really changed things. Because before, I mentioned, you know, they look at the paper record, they look at the first 2 pages or something, and they didn't go back to see. So the idea that you have that medical record and you can, and now they're developing methods, you know, for scanning the record so you can ask a question and get information out of it very quickly. This is one of the most important things that has happened, I believe, because there you have actual data that you can look at rather than just using your intuition and deciding how to treat the patient.
Yeah, and another aspect of that would be of information technology, the fact that we can collect data almost continuously about people, right? And you'll have to have special methods to actually to find the needles in the haystack, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, so that's massive from information technology, big data.
Absolutely.
But that brings me to my second question, that do you see any negative effects of technology on medicine? You know, you talked about, you know, we can do so many things to help medicine. Are there any technical capabilities that actually, aspects of technology that actually, I can think about one, the fact if I have sensors and they collect my data continuously, is it good for me to know at any second my blood pressure and my blood count or whatever? Or it might have some negative psychological effects on me.
Yes, it would be very bad for hypochondriacs, for sure.
I'm not one of them, but who knows?
I wasn't implying you were a hypochondriac. I think there is the possibility of it being negative. The other thing is, you know, you say you have all that data you can look at, and in the United States we have something called HIPAA regulations, which protects your personal records. So, you know, you have to be very careful and in fact, this in some way prevents you from getting some of the data you would like to have. You can't just pull the data off the records. You know, you have to take all the identifiers out. You have to have permission, and there's a lot of rigmarole to go through. So from that point of view, it's difficult. But the other thing is, you know, you have the electronic medical record you could look at. You still don't know if the physician actually spends a lot of time looking at it, because physicians are overworked. I mean, it's true, they're overworked. They don't have much time. So in the past, as they read the first 2 pages, I don't think they probably look at the whole electronic medical record either. I think that's the reality. So I think we could do some more IT work on this and actually develop summary methods that would run automatically and pull out things. In fact, I've written a couple papers on this subject, where it actually, when the patient comes in, you have the record there, and you actually go out and you go electronically through the record and look for things that have changed. So then the computer reports back to the physician, you know, something happened, this was normal for 12 years and now it's out of range, that sort of thing. The computer can do this. Nobody's doing this at the moment, but I think this is the next thing that needs to be done. There's no reason not to do this. And I don't, you know, there's always this argument that physicians will have pushback. I don't think so, because they're very busy and they want to do a good job. So I think they would appreciate this kind of technology where these things came up. And even if the patient's getting better, I mean, they could also come up with that information, so maybe they could reduce their medication. There's a lot of possibilities there.
Tom?
So I assume this is where, yes. So actually, this is, first of all, I think it's wonderful that EMBS, Consumer Electronics, and other societies are working together on these initiatives. I've been involved in some of those things too. That's how the Future Directions Committee.
Right.
So I think it's really wonderful that we've got things going on. I'd like to feed on something about the conferences thing, and Jane, you and I were talking about this the other day. There actually apparently is a database of all the IEEE conferences, and I think we should take it as an action item. First of all, on the regional level, you know, the geographic level, as well as the society level, to do a better job of indexing, organizing, and letting people know about the events that are going on. For instance, the conference you were just looking at, Joe checked, it's actually the same time as another event.
It overlaps.
It's called the Global Humanitarian Technology Conference we're doing in San Jose.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, we need to create, I think, a better data, take it as an action item, create some better database to allow us to really know how to do this stuff and be able to like put relevant conferences on our websites. Anyway, that's my comment. It's not really a question, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you. In fact, when I was developing this talk, I started looking around for things, and it's not that easy to find. You have to do a lot of work to get the information. And, yeah, well, Jane is writing that down, and I'm sure she'll have that problem solved in no time at all.
Yes.
Just want to sort of come back to some of the things that we talked about today. And one of the things that's actually already been highlighted at this conference, we got Petra right in the front. She's from the University of Kenton working on rehabilitation stuff, actually. She didn't raise her hand when you asked before who's working on assisted living. One of the issues that sort of comes up is those of ethics. You know, how do we keep records? What do we do? How do we get permission? When
Right.
can we ask somebody for permission and so on? And I think one of the things we've done in our society is we've combined with the Society of Social Implications of Technology and working with them. They're putting articles in our magazine. As a matter of fact, this magazine that's outside is the first issue with SSIT content. And I think this is something maybe as a life sciences community, yeah, that's it. We need to look at more. And I think not just in the medical side, I think the way consumer devices are being used and the way they're changing our daily lives, we need to look at the social implications of what we're doing in our work. Often we're too focused on technical issues and don't consider the broader issues that we're creating with our technology.
I agree with you entirely, and I think this is something that is yet to be addressed, and I appreciate your question.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Donna.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.